Thank you very, very much for those generous introductions. And thank you to everyone here for coming for this talk. Can we please have a loud round of applause for Shobhaa on stage here right now? I am so excited.
Thank you. It's so great to see a full house.
A full house, standing room
Full house.
only.
Lovely.
And on the front lawn, on day 2 of JLF, talking about what is possibly one of your most fun, but also one of your most sort of poignant books yet. The Sensual Self.
Thought-provoking too, I hope.
Thought-provoking, and in these times in particular thought-provoking. I want to start off with a story because I can. In 2019, I was working as a election campaign manager for the Maharashtra Congress when I decided to come out of the closet and started something called Pink List India. Now it existed on Instagram and then lived on and became viral in some parts. But then a journalist from the Times of India called me up and said, can we do your interview? I said, yes. Little did I know that one fine Sunday morning, hours after I had woken up, because I wake up very late, there was a full article with a massive photo of me that said, you're always told you can't be queer and in politics, and that needs to change. And the only reason anyone read it is because it was next to Shobha's column. Now, Shobhaa is someone who has occupied the public imagination for so long and in fields that are so diverse that it's difficult to begin a conversation with you. Now, we're talking about the sensual self, we're talking about desire, and as a politician discussing desire on stage, my biggest worry is I'm going to get cancelled. But I want to start off by asking, what is this taboo around desire? And how have you been so reckless in breaking it left, right, and center?
Anish, what is the taboo around politics and desire? Why will you get cancelled? In any case, your party is lost. So you can relax. You'll have to look for another party. You asked for that. But thank you all very much. And thank you, the wonderful, charming person who introduced me. He's knocked 3 years off my age. I'm actually 78. But thank you for the compliment. Back to the book.
Yes.
Why is it important? Because I believe for the longest time, in a country like ours, which is actually steeped, marinated in all things sensual, whether it's the clothes we wear, the sari is by far the most sensual garment ever. No designer can possibly improve on the sari, the drape, how it takes the shape of the woman who's wearing it, or the man, more and more these days. But our spices, our weather, our colors, everything about India celebrated, shouted sensuality. Then somewhere down the line, the British came and ruined it all. The party was over. And what we then had to accept was a version of Victorian prudery, as boring and as bland as their cuisine. So this, when I wrote the book, it was out of a sense of a bit of panic and a bit of self-examination too. Because growing up in a middle-class Maharashtrian home, these were not topics one discussed. The word was never mentioned. Desire, the word itself seems so intimidating and scary in our society. So I grew up with questions with no answers and no one to turn to and no one to ask anything to, because school, Scottish mission, did not encourage such conversations either. Then a Jesuit college with priests teaching us psychology. Well, you couldn't quite raise this with a Spanish Jesuit priest, like, you know, sir, what does desire mean when your hormones are raging and, you know, you're 18 years old and I actually have a serious crush on you? Can't say it, but I did. Father Philela, I adored him. I used to follow him around. I was like a starstruck, a fangirl. So were a lot of other girls in my class. But we couldn't even have these conversations with one another, even as grown-up adult people, not even with people from your own gender. It was just not encouraged. And then many years ago, I co-edited an anthology with Khushwant Singh, and it was called Uncertain Liaisons. And it was very academic. There were essays from scholars trying to understand desire and deconstruct what we mean by desire in today's India. The book flopped. No one read it. It was very boring. The approach was dull. It was too professorial, and desire is anything but. It's all instinct. It's passion. It's what you feel. It's how you respond to stimuli. And I continued to be kind of somewhat in the dark about my own sensuality, my own feelings towards it, and so the book. It's been with me for a very long time. So it's not some kind of halka-pulka entertainment book. It's my own way to examine something which I believe is a very powerful, very basic human impulse that we tend to underrate, underestimate.
And you make that point so beautifully through the course of the book, right? Because this very aspect of desire that you just spoke about, that we're always told ki, arey, Western influence is creating desire. We don't talk about such things. It's coming through your phone. It's coming through the iPad that somebody sees. And in the book, there's a beautiful part where you talk about a young girl looking at herself in the mirror. And uncovering desire for herself and wanting to wear a bikini even though she doesn't get unsupervised time on her phone or ability to see television that her parents do not decide upon. And there's something so natural about desire and so innate. How do we learn how to acknowledge that innateness of desire?
We are still learning. I meet people all the time. I talk to people all the time. And even the questions that I'm often asked at a press conference, it's always skirted around. No one gets to the point. No one asks directly because they haven't dared perhaps to ask themselves that question directly. And it's a society that induces shame for no reason at all. I mean, it's something so basic, so innate, as you mentioned, that the more conversations we have around it, the better we'll all feel about feeling what we feel. But right now, feeling what we feel itself is covered in shame and guilt. And young girls in particular in our society are made to feel apologetic, ashamed, or dirty. Dirty, mainly that. So how do we remove that? I don't have the answers. I've tried to raise the questions, and I hope that these questions will lead to more open conversations, particularly in an era of social media where the influences can be so strong, so disturbing for young minds that they don't know the difference between sexuality, sensuality, or love-making versus plain copulation. There is no distinction, there is no subtlety, there are no nuances. I talk to a lot of very young people, and it's really quite... in a way, it's kind of disappointing to see how their lack of interest in intimacy itself, completely. They don't make eye contact with each other. They don't touch each other. I've seen people, young people, on dates, romantic dates. It could be on Valentine's Day. It could be an anniversary. And the most intimate relationship they're having is with their phones. So there'll be a guy and a girl sitting at a table, scrolling the entire time. No conversation. Possibly one or both have got earpods on. So is it a kind of scare that the young today have? And I can understand it because post-COVID, there was enormous psychological, cataclysmic change within all of us. We started to question emotions. We started to question ourselves, our relationships. And this is the generation after, went through it at a very formative during years which were sensitive. And maybe they really don't know what to do with feelings of even frustration because they don't know it as frustration. And a lot of people who've read the book, the young, have come and asked me a question very seriously that what does, you use the word courtship, they say to me. You use the word suitor. You use the word woo. What does it even mean? They're not putting me on. They really don't know because it's not there in their lives.
And I was going to ask, what has the reception been? You've made it into an almost political mission to talk about desire even when inconvenient, even when it's shut down. Early on, you faced a lot of criticism, a lot of backlash. You weathered that storm and said that I am what I am. And I will keep talking about this. And I will still be taken seriously when I talk about other things while I talk about desire. How do you see that reception changing over the last few decades?
Well, the other things, I hate the idea that we have to compartmentalize desire and put it in a category by itself. It's a composite. It's a part of everything that interests me, whether it's politics, social change, media, movies, music, desire, definitely. Because it's at the centerpiece of human existence. So how can we pretend that it doesn't exist or that we are indifferent to it? I think it's a tragedy if we devalue it. The young, we need to start these. You ask me how do they relate? They relate wonderfully well. I mean, they're just not as judgmental as it's normally writers will, a lot of them will confirm that it's your own contemporaries and colleagues who hate you the most, and you get the maximum hate from them. But now that I'm of a certain vintage, most of my colleagues are either dead or toothless, so it doesn't matter. So when they do meet me, it's sort of we make polite noises and move on. The young are interested. They're vibrantly interested in life. So if you just nudge them in the right direction, like there are passages in the book where I've said, try making love to our beautiful ragas. I mean, the rags that we have all grown up listening to. Even if you don't know Indian classical music, you would still respond to the beauty of a rag. And we have a rag for the morning, we have a rag for the afternoon, for the evening, for the night. We have poetry. I've quoted Kalidasa extensively in the book because what can be more romantic than a lovelorn poet sending messages to his beloved via a cloud? Yeah. Now you try saying that to the young, and they are actually listening and they're finding it intriguing, but they're not dismissing it, which is important. They're open. No one has bothered to talk to them about it. That's about it.
And desire tends to get bottled up. You ask why politicians don't talk about desire. Unfortunately, they only get caught watching porn in the assembly, and then that's when they sort of have to talk about desire. But we bottle up desire, we try to police it. Recently, the Supreme Court, in all of its wisdom, passed oral observations that you should link your Aadhaar card when you're watching adult content. Now imagine going and watching something on the internet and uploading your Aadhaar card each time. But a funny thing that came out of it, to my mind, was I would love for a Russian hacker to hack into this once everyone's Aadhaar card was uploaded and then let it all be out into the open. What happens in the deepest, darkest corners of your home on your cell phone should become public. We should talk about it more. And then perhaps we'll get over this hiccup and be able to admire Kalidas and the sort of ways in which he talks about the cloud, but also about lovemaking.
Absolutely. I don't see that happening in a hurry. I love your imagination of the Russian hacker, but maybe it may just happen, who knows. Anything can happen. And with politicians and desires, where do they have the time for it? And I think their greatest love affair is with themselves, like movie stars. It's two categories. No, there could be cricketers in the mix, where they don't see beyond themselves. I often wonder whether they make love to their mirror images or whether they actually physically see a person because of their own narcissism and the bubble in which they exist. So, every person one actually meets, like regular people, are so longing. They're longing for that connection, but not able to articulate it because we don't validate that. We make them feel somehow it's something, a deep, dark, dirty secret that or it's either pornography or it's nothing.
Yeah.
So either you're I'm sure, we'll come to that later, but we don't have nuanced conversations. We don't have balanced, reasonable conversations around either sex, And in the book, I've also spent a lot of time talking about how we romanticize the Suhag Raat. For a lot of young brides, it's the worst Raat of their lives because no one's prepared them as to what to expect. They're associated with brutality, with pain, but as they say, a bride has to bleed. Has anything changed? Has not changed. 2026, I still hear my friends advising their daughters कि लड़की को बस पवित्र होना चाहिए. What does pavitra mean? She has to be a virgin. Literal translation. There's no other interpretation. And that पति को खुश रखना. What does that mean? You have to be sexually compliant, passive. The question of consent doesn't arise. And Suhag Raat in particular, because of the way Bollywood has projected it, our songs, popular culture, there's a mythology created around it, which goes against anything that an unprepared young woman may actually want for herself. And all it needs is a person, especially young men, to be told by their own family that you cannot pounce on your bride. She's not a piece of meat that you have to conquer that night. But it's also peer group pressure. It's their friends who are saying, go, dikhao sabko and all. It's part of our whole narrative of what men, mard, kaise hote hain. That has not changed. And sometimes I feel really saddened that the speed at which one would expect that to have changed and the younger men to be more sensitized to what a woman wants or what a woman expects. Just ask her, for heaven's sake. No one asks.
But even when they do ask, and you've drawn this beautifully, and you've often made the comparison between pornography and erotica, and how pornography paints a picture of sex that's so devoid of reality that it transforms the ways in which we engage with each other. And there's a chapter in that book, and I'm not going to read it because we also don't have that much time, but there's a chapter in the book that deals with role play. And this young couple that is engaging in role play. And the wife says, I want to be a courtesan.
Yes.
And they decide to sort of engage in this role play. And at night, the husband comes over with his friends to engage in a drunken brawl while his wife is the entertainment.
Yes.
And suddenly, that access to this idea of role play, these new vocabularies of sex, is transformed into yet another act of domination because we haven't found the language to talk about this.
Absolutely right. We haven't found the language. And I don't know when we will, but that particular chapter was narrated to me by the very lady who thought she would impress her husband. And she had rehearsed because a lot of male fantasies revolve around Rekha's character in Umrao Jaan, as you know. And a lot of women assume that they will be able to maybe woo back a husband who's looking elsewhere by recreating the whole Umrao Jaan scenario. And then what happens in that chapter is tragic, but it's true. A role playing can backfire if both people are not in sync with one another. They're not in sync with each other's sensitivities. And all it needs is to tune in and just listen. I mean, the most important four-letter word is talk. If you don't talk, if you don't engage in conversation, then what you get is copulation. It's not lovemaking.
But what's heartbreaking is that she doesn't say anything.
She can't. Most women are taught to keep silent.
How do we change that? How do we change that? And what does it mean to sort of break that? And how do we make desire something that is something you can discuss?
I think the younger generation, I'm talking about people in their 20s, are breaking the rules. I see it a lot. I talk to young friends of my children, and they are certainly more articulate, and including the presence of parents, including when they're talking to future husbands as to what constitutes a healthy, good relationship for them, and that includes bedroom etiquette. What happens in the boudoir? It was a topic that was never ever tabled, never aired. It was considered too dangerous, too threatening to society on the whole, because there are just so many things that are so horribly wrong with our interpersonal relationships, which are never talked about, and we only get the Bollywood version of love and romance, and it distorts just about every reality that exists in contemporary society and misleads a young girl who, again, has no one to talk to. Who is she going to ask?
And I wonder, because you mentioned Rekha and Umrao Jan, and there is a way in which, by the way, Indian drag queens,
Yes.
men who dress as women, love Umrao Jan, right? Because Rekha becomes this character through which desire can be expressed in so many myriad ways. And Rekha can be so liberatory, right? And for queerness, drag becomes this space. And Alok Ved Menon was here yesterday, and they had an incredible session on performance and gender and how you dress will influence how people see you, but also how you see yourself. Have we forgotten to have fun while talking about desire? You know, it's all corporate rule book. This is good touch, bad touch. You know, you're segregated into categories of desire that are allowed and disallowed. How do we make desire fun again?
It can be playful. I don't know about fun, but young people who approach it not in that kind of a, I've got to get on with it and I've got to do it right. There's no right, there's no wrong. It's what your body desires, it's what your partner desires, it's what you mutually desire and what you mutually respect. That's all that counts. But that, again, is something that needs to be discussed much more in a way that is honest and without the camouflage and the fig leaf of theories. Because these theories, are so dated and so boring. So there should be maybe just an openness. Some doors have to be open, especially for young girls, because the guys seem to cope okay. They have each other to boast to. But young girls can't even boast, because what are they going to boast about and to whom? Because most of it is a complete lack of any experience till they actually get married and are with a partner who may or may not understand their desires. Maybe the older generation also has a role to play, and maybe parents should be talking a little more freely and more honestly with young people, preparing them in a way, because certainly in our classrooms are not going to do it. And society at large will definitely not do it, because the taboos work for society. They keep the women in control, because a sexually adventurous man is admired. A sexually adventurous woman is labeled a nympho, a slut, a whore. So these double standards, I don't see them disappearing in a hurry. But a lot of women today are taking charge of their lives in a way that is not confrontational, it's not intimidatory, it's just they want to be who they are. They want to express themselves, their desires, on their own terms. If that makes society uncomfortable, so be it.
And that, I think, we have to have a loud round of applause for that. And that perhaps is the quietly brilliant work that this book does, right? That it breaks those boundaries, and through storytelling, it makes you laugh in parts, it makes you giggle. You want to read it a little secretly. You don't want somebody peeking over and seeing what you're reading, but you also secretly love what you're reading. It challenges you at times.
Can make you squeamish too.
It can make you squeamish.
Because it's quite graphic.
It is very graphic. Yeah. But in some ways, stories become the ways in which we can change society in a way that clearly laws have been unable to, clearly schools have been unable to, clearly nice Jesuit education has been unable to. And those stories become the vehicles for this transformation. Absolutely. And this form acquires a new importance, you know. What Khushwant Singh in your anthology couldn't do, this book manages to do so beautifully.
I hope so. Some of our movies are attempting it. I see a lot of it, especially with our regional cinema. I think their narratives are far more powerful, far more honest, and certainly more authentic than anything that Bollywood has attempted. Tries to pass off as a reflection of our social realities. It is anything but. It's a distortion, not a reflection.
Fair enough. But I want to ask the last question I have of you before we open up to wonderful questions from the audience, which is, the act of storytelling involves a lot of listening. you know, people open up to you immediately. Every room you enter into, people are very eager to tell you their stories. In the sort of stories that you've collected in this book, can you narrate a few times when someone has come up to you and told you something that perhaps they've told nobody else? And what is that experience for them? Is it relief? Is it a kind of kinship? What is happening when people share these stories?
It's a wonderful feeling of, I feel deeply moved, deeply touched when that happens. I could be sitting minding my own business at an airport, and a lady comes up to me very diffidently and says, "Aapke saath ek baat karoon?" And then she tells me something, like you said, maybe she's never dared to articulate to anyone within her own family. I don't know what makes her do that, but I believe it has to be some sort of an energy and confidence, maybe, and trust, or maybe a sense of association. Maybe she's read something of mine. Maybe she feels comfortable enough that if I say it to this lady who I don't know and I'm never likely to meet again, it'll stay with her and it'll be cathartic for me. It's quite possible. And we all need that because in the US or anywhere else in the world, anything that you need sorted, there are therapists to supposedly sort it out, but they often twist your head much more than they ever sort out anything. And today with access to the internet, you can also go online. But for a lot of women who don't have that access, there's one way of woman-to-woman sharing, which I find I value deeply. It's very precious to me.
And those are networks of community, of care.
Oh yes, oh yes.
And you're a very private person otherwise.
Yes.
Right? And you sort of write books that are so public, right? In that you're surrounded by people all the time, but you're very private. Yes. What does that duality look like? And do you ever sort of question what it would look like to not be in the public gaze all the time?
Tough question, Anish. I really wouldn't know, because from the age of perhaps 10, when I was a competing national level athlete, I was accustomed to that gaze, or I was accustomed to being somewhat in the public eye and people kind of knowing who I was from the age of 10. It's something maybe I haven't really thought about, I've never had to think about. But I don't see the dichotomy. To me, it's compartmentalized very clearly. My private life is for me, is my own. What I write in the public domain is to spark off conversations which we don't normally engage in. And I'm completely okay with that dichotomy, as you called it. It has always existed from my teenage years. Then after being an athlete who was often featured in the newspapers for holding state records and all of that, to becoming a very high profile model for 5 years. Again, it was always the outer world and the gaze. It never really preoccupied me. It still doesn't. It doesn't bother me.
And you've often said how that early training as an athlete almost steeled you to that gaze. You sort of were very aware of it, but you also knew that you were not intimidated by it.
I was distant enough from it as well. I mean, I've always maintained that distance. I mean, that is what you do as someone who's somewhat known in the public. And the person you are is who you are. And I guard that quite fiercely.
And I know we've just been told we have a few more minutes for conversation beyond what I see on the screen here. So I'm going to take the liberty of asking you about the sort of reflections that have taken place in this book, but also to 70 and Hell with It, which are a very different kind of reflections. You know, I think there's a way in which the earlier books were in the midst of glamour. They were about the parties and about love and about desire, but they were also at a time when you did not have to confront more difficult questions about what happens when desire fades or when the body starts to age. And you've been very honest in this book. And you've said that these are questions we also need to confront. That beyond the sex and all of those things that young people need to be talking about, what are the old people talking about? And how do we reconcile with this absence of desire, the fading of desire?
There's no such thing as absence of desire. There's no age limit on desire. the brain never gets fatigued. I'm talking about people who have inspired me personally, whether it's Neruda or it's the great artists, whether it's Da Vinci, whether it's Hussein Saab, whether it's Picasso. They were in their 90s, but desire and fantasy never left them. So there is no reason for anyone to stop their imagination. Why should you? And fantasy is something so creative, so healthy, so inspiring, so beautiful. Why should you deny yourself that? But yes, the idea of senior citizens harboring desire makes society very uncomfortable. And it shouldn't. It shouldn't because, yes, your body may not be able to perform what your brain wants to, what's telling you to. But that doesn't stop your brain from wanting pleasure. And that is something eternal. And, you know, it stays with you for your whole entire life. And it's your impetus, it's your creative force within you. Why should anyone tell you that there is a kind of cutoff point for your imagination or for desire? Let me tell you, there's none.
Thank you so much once again, Shobhaa, for really showing in many ways that desire transcends what happens in the bedroom but becomes a powerful force that makes you question all norms. It makes you break free. It liberates you in so many ways. And for showing that today more than ever we need that desire.
And it's not desire which is necessarily has sexual connotations. Yeah. I'm talking about, again, a personal aspect of my life, that my husband who's 86, I'm 78. We see each other. We acknowledge each other. We exist for each other. We complement each other. It can be a light touch. It can be a gentle caress. It could be a peck. But we haven't become invisible. Society wants old people to disappear, to become invisible. Hell no. Hell no.
Hell no. On that note, I know many of you have been waiting to ask questions. Can you please raise your hands and I will get a mic passed on to you.
We have 3 minutes.
We have more minutes being added. Yes, the lady at the back there.
So my name is Sarita and I'm principal for Ryan International School. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
What a pleasure to hear you.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of getting retirement after 5 years and there you are. I read you when I was in college and I'm watching you. You are still writing? What drives you?
Still?
Ma'am, what keeps you young at 78 is my question. What gives you these thoughts? Desires, I understand. But then what keeps you so jubilant, so chirpy? What is the raz?
I feel like one of those birds chirping away on a tree close by. No, seriously, it's just the way I'm wired. I can't say I have a formula I can pass on to someone. But if you look at life as an unending adventure, and whatever is possible at your age, to do it with grace, to do it with all your josh, to give it your all, nothing stops any of us from doing the exact same thing. It's the limitations we place on ourselves or the pressure that society exerts, and especially on, particularly on women after a certain age. And I can't stop repeating this one thing, which is for all of us to think about, that a major part of a woman's existence from the time she is prepubescent, she then gets her period, she has to deal with that. Then she gets married, then she gets her children, then she has to deal with pre-menstrual tensions, then now she has to think about pre-puberty, then it's about her pre-pregnancy, post-pregnancy, depression after pregnancy, then 10 years of menopause, then what? There are all sorts of terms now for various stages of menopause, and then menopause itself. By then, your life is over. It's over. Are we going to accept that as defeat? Or are we going to say that's part of the cycle of life, it's hormonal, and we are going to be on top of it and make the most of it? This cannot be wished away. This is the cycle of every woman's life. Most, 90% of women. It is what it is. It's our reality. We can either make that a trigger to get the best out of ourselves, or surrender and say, oh my God, I've done my duty towards my family. I've done my duty as a wife, as a grandmother, as a sister, as a daughter, society, my job. And now it's time for me to disappear into a little corner and become a harmless little old lady sitting there, maybe doing crochet. We don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want to. Let nothing stop you. Nothing.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Waiting to see you when you are 95 and I'm 75.
Thank you.
Other questions? The lady right here in the second row.
Good evening, ma'am. It's an honor to see you speak in person. You have shaped my younger days. I've been reading, a great fan. Thanks for that. My question to you is, while you were in the industry as a journalist, while you were writing so frankly, how did you tackle any kind of taboos, especially by the men around you in your industry?
What about the men in the industry? I didn't pay any attention to whatever they tried to do to keep me in. Honestly, I was doing my job. I was doing my job.
At the back there, we've got a lady raising her hand. Can we have the mic to her, please?
Madam, you are an inspiration, especially your political comments. I don't know how you can be so fearless. But my question is, we have made our daughters smart, modern. What about the sons? Why can't the parents, and what do you suggest they should be doing to make the sons also modern? They are educated, but not modern.
I think we have to train their fathers.
At the back there, the gentleman.
Thank you, Shobhaa Ji. 15 years ago, when I was nearing my superannuation, I had read Shobhaa at 60. This time when I saw the details of this JLF 26, I was expecting that you have written Shobhaa at 80 and some suggestions for the people who are following you just 2-3 years.
Sir, I still have 2
behind
years
you,
to go. Maybe
so
I'll
you
do it
should
at
have
80.
given-
2 more years. Give me 2 more years. We'll meet again.
Anyway, it's glad to listen to you, but you should have written some suggestive book, particularly for the boys or the younger generation, and कुछ अध्यात्म भी हो जाए, थोड़ा उस टाइप का भी लिख दीजिएगा. बाकी चीज़ें तो आपकी बहुत वर्षों से हम पढ़ते आए हैं, बहुत अच्छा लगता है.
Thank you so much. Valuable suggestion.
At the back there, the lovely gentleman raising his hand in the yellow.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
So my question is, I'm in my early 20s and we totally relate with your books and everything. And I feel, can you just give me a mic, it sorts me. Yeah, I'm getting conscious, so. Okay. So I want to know, everybody has intimacy and but whenever I try to talk with my fellow people in public, but the words are too much enough, it make us conscious. Like I can't in my friends group in the public place like sex. It will make us conscious. So I just want to know how we can communicate this thing, delicately, because every time we need someone like you, then we are having here the big togetherness and we are talking about the same topic. So how we can make, a small initiative from our end, we can discuss and we can get at the same place, because everybody seek for the connection. Please.
You don't need to say sex. Like you don't have to say papad. You can communicate it far more delicately, I'm sure, than having to spell it out. But I can't resist sharing a story which I found absolutely wonderful, your age group story. I met a young lady in Pune a marketing director of a hotel. And we were having a drink together. I'd had an event at the hotel, and that same evening, she wanted to chat with me, and she was talking to me, and suddenly out of the blue, and it's Jaipur related, therefore I'm relating it here. She asked me, ma'am, have you tried Jaipur's pink gin? So I had not heard of it, and I had not tried it. So I said, no, is it any good? Is it great? She said, it's fantastic. So I said, when did you first taste it? She said, oh, I met a guy who asked me, can I buy you a drink? And I knew it was a hookup, so I accepted. Then he said, can we go to my home? And I knew exactly what he was saying and what he wanted. And I said, yeah, let's go to your home. They went to his home, and he gave her this pink gin. So she said after a lot of pink gins, this Jaipur pink gin, she came home feeling absolutely fantastic. So I said, are you still in touch with the guy? So she said, no, ma'am, I don't even know his name, but I remember the gin. That is also a reality. And she said it so naturally. It wasn't that she was trying to make some point or to be shocking, not at all. And we're still in touch. So she is stored in my phone as Jaipur Pink Gin. So when that I know it's her, and she wants to ask me some funny question about her life.
In this third row here. Last.
Hello. First of all,
Hi.
I'm sorry I'm being so nervous. So, in Insatiable, you have written that the first line I remember, you said that the 3 things I cannot be. You promised that in that book. You said profound, pedantic, and pretentious. So, I want to know, have you ever pretending something or anything in your life to like
I think
any sort
all
of
women
reason?
in this room will agree, yes, we pretend and we fake it.
On that note, once again, a loud round of applause for the constantly enigmatic Shobhaa Dé.